Hi everyone, I'm Carey Pena and we are here in our Inspired Media 360 studios doing some health and wellness interviews to try to help everyone navigate this time. And I want to bring in now Robert Koagedal, my friend, the owner of AcuHealth. Robert, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you, Carey.
You were kind enough to jump in here with me today. You have a very well-respected practice based in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we're going to talk about three things today. Relaxation is a skill, fear and immune function, and practical tools for reducing stress in this current climate. So let's start with relaxation. I see you're getting in your yogified pose. So talk to us about how we can find ways to relax.
Well, I would start by, if I was remembering when you and I had our last conversation, one of your questions involved one of your favorite quotes. And as I thought about relaxation as a skill, I was remembering that quote, which was Einstein's, where he said, at any point, any human being is going to have to decide whether or not they believe it is a hostile or a friendly universe. And the position of relaxation as a skill means that on some level, if you've decided it's a hostile universe, it's going to be pretty challenging for you to find relaxation, if you want to call it peace. So it begins by, as the quote from John O'Donohue, the way you look at things is the most powerful force in shaping your life. And so how we look at things begins with how we interpret that big picture view. And I think that's important. And I like to mention that only because I don't want to add just more strategies that stress people out. Because when you kind of give a lot of people who are anxious, you tell them, you need to sit and meditate. You know what that does?
It
creates more stress.
More stress, yeah, because you're trying to think through, how am I going to do that, and what does that mean? I appreciate that you
Exactly.
say that. So what can we do from a practical, not to add any more weight to people's shoulders, when we wake up in the morning? Naturally, a lot of people are feeling that stress and anxiety. So take us through some ways that we can try to tamper that.
You bet. So there's some practical tools, again, that are pretty universal, that don't necessarily involve any specific tradition, but are, from that point of view, known to help your nervous system move out of what's called the fight or flight, or the sympathetic dominance, and help you access that part of your consciousness that we would call the parasympathetic, that which is above the fight or flight response. But I think we have to emphasize that at some very big picture view, it starts with how you interpret this experience called being alive. And if you can access that part of your perspective in which you see that this whole experience we call being here didn't happen as a form of torture for us to be anxious all the time, but is really an experience in which we're invited to experience our deepest bliss. And so from that perspective, then these tools really enhance accessing that. So the first one, that's probably the simplest for most people, is called the 4-7-8 breath. Are you familiar with that one?
I don't think so.
So this is a very simple tool that anyone who experiences anxiety, and I think we can all agree that this is a pretty anxious time. And certainly that the patients that I've been seeing for the past 20 years, it seems that anxiety, worry, fear not only have not gone down with the advent of various pharmaceutical treatments, but have increased in severity. And so when I say that it is a skill, I mean that it is an ability to access the built-in physiology of your body, your mind, and your heart integrated for relaxation. So the 4-7-8 breath helps you access your breathing. So we start by just on the inhalation for 4 seconds, we hold it for 7, and then we release it for 8. So the in breath is 4, we hold it for 7. You can do it with me, and we'll just do it together here for a second, okay? In breath is 4. Hold for 7. Out for 8. So this is a well-tested, method for moving the consciousness, which is generally identified with what we call fear thinking or anticipatory thinking, which is the mind, or you could say the attention, following the endless stream of projecting into the future, in which we're trying to anticipate danger. And that in and of itself is a habit. And what I like to at least convince my patients of is not reality. It's a learned habit. And that's why I call relaxation is a skill, is that applying the 4-7-8 breath is one. And if you want another one to kind of, I don't even want to know if we want to add that one. Let's stay with that one for now, and maybe we can discuss some other ones later.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with kind of the 101 lesson from you for
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Let's start with the 101.
Talk to me about fear and immune function. Obviously, boosting our immune systems right now is critically important.
The experience of fear, anxiety, worry, biologically means that you are interpreting your experience, and you could do this as a more dramatized metaphor, as though a lion is coming at you. And if we run chronically on that system of being on alert to the degree that we imagine there is a threat, this shifts all of the energy resources of how our body utilizes and communicates between our nervous system. So that means that we shift out of the relaxation response into the sympathetic, and the biological implications of that are you release adrenaline. You release adrenaline and cortisol, which act in the body to shrink blood vessels. And they shrink the blood vessels, and you literally become a poor converter of making your own hydrochloric acid in your stomach, so that your digestive system starts to fail. You, in the fertility work that I do, you inhibit the ability of pregnenolone to become estrogen and progesterone. That means you become what's called pregnenolone steal effect. It means pregnenolone, rather than becoming good digestive function and building your own endogenous sex hormones, you make and build cortisol and adrenaline as a steal. It steals that conversion from the relaxation, and you could say like a river, it angles it towards cortisol and adrenaline. If you do that chronically, you run up into what I think most holistic practitioners would call adrenal fatigue, right? You've heard that term before?
Yes.
And so these skills of being able to access that part of your nervous system that is free, open, settled, is not just a nice thing. It's not just something pleasant. It literally is biologically how you maintain your optimal hormone levels, your good, healthy digestive function, you maintain your good sleep. And so you could say that stress, anxiety, and worry are at the heart of so many of the chronic diseases that people experience today.
So what are some practical tools? And you gave some great breathing off the top, but let's talk about some practical tools. If I'm listening to you, so we take it out of the esoteric into what do I do?
Yeah. And well, let's add, for the purposes, since the immune system is on everyone's mind, and maintaining good immune function is really not just a practical skill, it can be life-saving in this conditions, is that you have on every T cell in your immune system, which is a part of the defense system that your immune system has, you have receptor sites for what are called endorphins, which is, you could equally argue that your immune system is a free-floating nervous system that is listening to your environment continually. So fear, and this is why I love your work, Carey, and what you're creating and building, is just your title of your business, the name of your business, Inspired Media, is such a different story than the feedback that we get in what we would call the popular media, which, if it's anything, is really about generating, creating, and amplifying the fear state. And so your work as an opportunity to spread inspiration is really my hope that where we're going to go in the direction of telling stories, and that those stories, how they're meaningful and how they're connected to big picture things in which we live in essentially a friendly or kind universe.
Thank you, by the way, for the kind words about the work that I'm doing. I mean, we're here right now in the studio, safely distanced, Carlos and I, but I've turned over my studio to help generate content that I think is really useful and important right now. And certainly what you've been talking about today is part of that. Before we go, if you could, just very quickly, Robert, just say a few words about the importance of what we put into our bodies. I know we've done some segments, you and I, about the importance of food, but you've been talking about the immune system.
Great question. Since probably our last conversation, I think I've evolved a very different perspective on you could say the food story and the central importance of it towards people's health. I think what we're moving into is a very different era in health and medicine, in prevention and wellness. And that is that the key thing that's going to be the signal for most of us is getting our light correct. And the light story is going to show up in all of science and the literature of medicine, is that if you are in circadian dysrhythmia, that is, if you start looking at the screen without getting first the solar light from the rising of the sun, you miss out on the most key signal that is the central way that your body times everything in its body. At this point, I've arrived at a very different conclusion than what are called the food gurus, which is that food, if it's anything, is really just is a barcode for photosynthesis. Food, in that sense, is just the light cycle of where the food is grown relative to its latitude on planet Earth. Now, I don't want to get too esoteric, but light, if you don't get your light signals right, so the first thing we do at our house for some practical stuff is there's no screens allowed. The first thing is that you go outside, get your bare feet in the ground, you watch the rising of the sun, and you drink some high quality water or spring water. And when you do that one thing as a ritual, when you start your day by inviting natural light into your eyes and onto your skin, you have begun a process that is much more powerful than having to correct your food. And if you can get that right by mitigating the light at night, these are called blue blocking glasses, so that you mitigate your lighting environment at night. If you want to go into depth into that point at some future time, I'd be happy to discuss with you, because I know we're limited on time.
Yeah, I definitely want to have a longer interview with you, and I'll have you on my podcast, Carey Pena Reports. We're doing a lot of reporting in the coming weeks. I mean, this information is not just important right now as we walk through this crisis, but well into the future. Robert, thank you so much for being here, and just tell people where they can find out more about you and AcuHealth.
They can find more about our office at AcuHealth, AcuHealthAZ.com.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much, and my best to your beautiful wife and your little kiddos. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Carey.
Take care.